I think the biggest things over time really for us have been people, making sure it is that we consistently have good people and that we have standards for how it is that we operate. And then I think too, how you tell the story. The world is getting increasingly louder, maybe not louder, noisier. There's more happening from news to pings and dings and emails and tweets and all this other kind of stuff all the time. And how do I separate that stuff and make sure that we're communicating well?
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Jeremy Hill, founder and managing partner at JB Capital. Jeremy, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Nice to see you. Andrew, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to see you too. Appreciate you spending some time with us on Business Ninjas. Please tell us a bit about yourself and about JB Capital.
You know, it's crazy when you, everybody gets that question. So tell me about yourself, right? Everybody's immediate inclination is, oh, well, here's what I do for work and so on and so forth. And I think that's a shame. So I try to make it a point it is to not do that, right? At least off the cuff, right? So tell me about yourself. Husband, father, married almost 30 years, got 3 amazing kids, got a super hot wife, got a really cool dog. I love to drink whiskey. I like cigars. I'm a huge James Bond fan, and I like to chase my wife around, and every once in a while she lets me catch her, right? You know, that's, I don't know. That's Jeremy, right?
I know I liked you, but it's the needle's moving quickly.
It's moving up. Thank God, it's moving up. Well, when the bar's low, brother, you know, only place to go is up. You know, so that's me a little bit as an individual. As a company or as a founder, I started a company called JB Capital almost 25 years ago out of Seattle. I live in Paradise Valley, Arizona now, but we started the business in just outside of Seattle, Washington, and kind of started it by happy accident. I'd love to say it was this great, wonderful master plan of we're going to do all these wonderful things and here we go. And it was kind of like, let's kind of follow this path and see what happens. 25 years later, JB Capital, we got 3 offices up and down the West Coast. Small team, but we've done a little bit better than $2 billion in transactions and advisory work. And so we do a couple things. We are a hired gun, I guess, if you will. It is to kind of solve problems for growing companies and operators. So when we started, we were an independent investment banking advisor exclusively for real estate. So builders, developers, operators, investors in real estate that needed something different than, you know, rich uncle and local SBA bank type money. But, you know, the big fancy guys in New York or London wouldn't return their call. We solved those guys' problems. And so it was builders and investors and developers it is that weren't mom and dad with a Home Depot card and a hammer, but it wasn't, you know, Hines or Toll Brothers or Beacon Properties or Apollo or something like that, right? It was guys doing kind of 50 to 500 doors a year, and you needed differentiated capital, whatever the hell that meant, right? And so the business has grown now, and so now we do real estate capital and corporate capital, growing technology and healthcare and health tech type businesses across the country. We started our own funds now, and so we have an advisory and investment banking practice, and then we also have our own funds where we're investing off of my personal balance sheet and then raising funds alongside that. And so, you know, we kind of make it a point it is to try to solve complex problems for people that have complex lives, right?
Makes a lot of sense. Now, in terms of your clients, is it more about size of the business and the numbers involved than it is verticals? It's just a pretty agnostic approach, or?
You know, it's such a great question, by the way, and it's a little bit of both, right? Like, so we try to make it a point to where it is that that number one, we want to make sure that we can help. Like, as much as I love Andrew and Andrew's business and what he's doing, if he's either too early for us or maybe has a different view of how capital should work or what he's actually looking for, like if I don't believe that myself or the team can help you, I'd rather just be friends. Like, let's just have a cup of coffee together. Let's just have a beer together and be buddies, right? If I can't help you, I'm the first guy to say, dude, not your guy. But more often not, the verticals it is that we exist in, right? And so for real estate, I'm really good at a couple of things. We're really good at kind of the residential aspect, whether it's land development and title, single family, multifamily development, build to rent, that whole just vertical across residential and housing. I understand that better than most, right? There's plenty of people smarter than me But I understand that better than most. So we're really good at solving problems there. The other issue it is in the real estate world, that we're really good at is just purely the financial aspect of kind of engineering things for outcome. Right now, we have a lot of issues going on in kind of commercial mortgage securities. It is that are maturing, and people are kind of looking for a way out. And so we've been really good at kind of turning all the different dials of the Rubik's Cube and solving those problems for larger operators. So that's one. I'm not good at retail real estate. I just don't understand it. There's plenty of people it is that are good at that. I'm not one of them. So if there's somebody it is that's trying to do something and structure that, I'd rather introduce you to somebody that's better and smarter than me, because candidly, I'm just not that damn good at that. Right. On the other side of the house, in the corporate credit side, same thing, right? Like, I'm really good at kind of the software and technology and professional services side of the business, the law firm, CPA firms, wealth management practices, that kind of thing. I'm good at the tech-enabled services, real estate tech, education tech. I like that kind of space, but the business has to be, for me, a little bit further on, right? Like, we typically are dealing with companies that are kind of 10 million to 100 million in revenue. Not that I don't see value in a guy that's doing 5 million or just getting started. I'm just not that good at that, right? Like, there's a group of advisors and investors that are really good at seeing value in kind of emerging technologies and companies that are either pre-revenue, but they have technology and IP. I'm not that guy. Like, I'm pretty good looking. I'm just not that smart, right? So I try to stay within my lane.
Hey, it's kind of a lost art saying, no, I'm not the right guy for you, but. And that's an important distinction. I mean, if you're trying to establish a relationship that has legs,
Yeah.
you want trust. And saying you're good at something that you're not, and then under delivering, is not the way to facilitate that. And I've always believed in saying, you know what? I really don't know the answer to that question. Let me try to point you to something who does. No.
Well, the reality is you can't be good at everything. No, I mean, you'd love to be, right? You'd love to have that degree of kind of validation and importance it is that come to me and I'll solve all your problems. Let me just put out the tarot cards or whatever, right? Like, I'm not that, right? Like, I'm really good at a couple of things. And right. So I just try to make sure it is that we're trying to do the best it is that we can within those pieces. And if I don't know it, again, I will say often in the office, it's always going to be Jeremy, your friend, before it's Jeremy, your banker. Right. And so if I'm not the guy, dude, Andrew, I'd rather just be friends. Let me make sure that I can introduce you to somebody who actually can help you. Right.
And that's a logical approach. Your business has to be based on trust. So if there's no foundation, step one has to happen, right?
Yeah.
What are the most common problems you're solving for your clients?
Really, it's more often than not, the business started because you've got companies that are looking for access to capital to do X, define X, whatever it is that you will. It is in the real estate world. It was, look, we've got, some of our own money. We got some of the bank money, but I got a hole to fill. And I'm tired of, passing the coffee cup to all the rich doctors and dentists and, guys in my community. That gets old. Or those guys are tapped out because they've invested with me 5 times and now they're out of money. So now what do I do? Right? How do I solve those problems? On the corporate side, it's oftentimes, I'm trying to get my next product to market. I'm trying to buy out my partner, pay off my wife or ex-wife, or, open a new office or acquire a competitor. And, I'm not really sure I need like bank of whatever debt. I don't want to go to the SBA. I don't really know if I want to give up equity in my business. And so I need somebody it is that can kind of help me navigate the nuances of the private capital market and kind of make decisions. And ultimately, there is an enormity of capital it is that's moved into, what historically we've referred to as alternative markets, meaning non-public, right? Now you just refer to it as the private markets, which is candidly kind of taking over the world. The reality is that a lot of the entrepreneurs, a lot of the founders, a lot of the growing companies don't understand that behind that private capital is other decisions, right? Like, if I'm taking money from an early stage investor versus a private equity versus a family office versus a wealth manager or just Joe, the rich guy at the country club, each one of those guys has kind of different return expectations, different timelines, different expectations on how that relationship is going to work. And most of the entrepreneurs is like, I need $1 million. I need $5 million. I don't care if it comes from the Easter bunny, right? Like, I just need the money, right? And it's like, okay, cool, but let's back up one stage. How do you actually want this money to work? Right? How do you feel right? About having a debt obligation on something like that. How do you feel about having somebody sit in the boardroom with you and help you make decisions on these kinds of things? And, let's pause for a minute, because a dollar is not a dollar is not a dollar, right? And so it's really for us kind of educating and making sure it is that these growing companies are aligned with the proper type of capital it is. Because the worst thing it is that you want to do is bring in the wrong dance partner, and by way of lubricating their efforts with capital, you're crippling the company because you've layered them with too much debt, or you've brought in the wrong partner, or one thing or another. And so we just try to be thoughtful and judicious on those things.
Yeah, I mean, the funding is interesting, but the level of involvement, there's a very wide berth at the other that equation in terms of education. If somebody thinks they're handing you $1 million, I'm immediately on your board and I have, a percentage of say-so of all the corporate decisions. That's a very different relationship.
It's a different story. Yeah.
What differentiates JB Capital from its competitors? What makes you stand out other than you yourself, sir?
Oftentimes you look at what appears to be other people's strengths, right? You always compare, your weaknesses with somebody else's strength, which is, never does anything but a negative.
Well, it's human nature. It's
human nature, regardless of what it is, right? And so no matter how much how nice your car is, or your house is, or your fucking t-shirt, or whatever it is that you're wearing, you always notice somebody that is, oh, their car's nicer than mine, right? I think you do that some, or we did that some early with the business. Because I'm not a classically trained banker. I didn't spend time on Wall Street. I didn't go to B school, but I was really, really good at the relationships and the connectivity with people, at understanding what it is that their real issues were. And once it is that we did that, over time, we got a lot better at making sure it is that we were finding the proper person and the right type of structure for Andrew's business to go forward, rather than, I spent all this time at B school and here's what the model says, and that kind of I don't give, right? There's plenty of guys coming out of B school that are incredible at Excel and have a wonderful little Patagonia vest to prove it, but you've never done anything, right? You've never done anything, right? You have no real direct connectivity to somebody it is who's operating a business, that the success or failure of that business this year, this quarter, otherwise makes a difference to whether his kid gets to stay in private school and his wife gets to stay home. They don't understand that because you can't model that on a Excel. And we've gotten really, really good at taking those external factors into the decision-making about aligning the proper sorts of capital. And over time, I started to, what I thought initially 25 years ago, that was a weakness because we didn't have all the letters behind our name and the B school stuff. And I've never had a Patagonia vest. I'm now realizing that's my strength, right? So that part I think has been really, really good for us. A recent example of that is we have a very large real estate operator as a client. They're about $2.5 billion, single shareholder, and they own millions and millions and millions of square feet of Class A office. They are now in a situation to where it is that the commercial mortgage securities and the change in kind of cap rates over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years has taken billions of dollars of equity that a single family, single shareholder is, and near emasculated all of it. They hired who you'd think that they would hire, the big guys with the big brass and the fancy office and all the cool shit it is. And I'm sure tons of Patagonia vests behind the walls, right? They hired a bunch of those guys to come in who spent 6 to 8 months, 9 months, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of their money trying to find a solution, who ultimately walked away and said, sorry, there's nothing that we can do after all this time. They hired us exclusively about 3 months ago. We've been working nonstop on this. And this last week, we brought in $438 million of new capital. That is meaningful to them, and their legacy and their family and their children. Again, that's more of maybe a one-off of a difference, but it is a current, real-time, right now happening example of don't get disillusioned by the big office, the whatever it is, with offices across the country. Sometimes that's extraordinary, and sometimes it becomes so sanitized that there's no real emotion in solving the problem and understanding what the results are of not solving the problem does. And I think we've done a good job of that.
Well, there's a couple things that evokes for me. One, not going down the cookie cutter path that all other bankers and advisors have gone is invaluable, because Look, schools teach skill sets, they teach techniques.
Hmm.
Most of them don't seem to teach the human implementation side, because it's still human relationships at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I don't care whether we're talking about banking, music, art, architecture, whatever it is. So those large companies have a linear path. They farm out of certain schools. They want a certain approach to what they do. So you got a room full of people who have very similar perspectives and similar solutions.
Sure.
Not necessarily the answer. And then the second thing it evokes for me is that I can't imagine a sector that took a bigger hit in COVID than commercial real estate. I mean, at the time we lived in LA, and there were 12 skyscrapers being built at that one time. Just in that one little 4 square block area are millions of square feet of now empty office space. Can't even imagine how you turn that around. So tell me about the challenges and opportunities in your space. How did you sustain JB Capital through COVID?
It was interesting. There's a couple of revelations it is that I think came out of COVID for us. We all get into a rhythm of doing things, right? And after you've done things, whatever those things are, a certain way for 6 months or a year or 2 or 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever it is, it just seems like normal. And you never really kind of revisit the fact of, why are we doing these things this way? Who started this? Whose idea was this anyway? And so I think a lot of companies, ours included, did the same thing through COVID. One of the things it is that came out, it is for us, is we were spending a piss ton of money, like thoughtlessly. Like prior to COVID, before it is that we went into that, we're looking at, like, how often are you going out to lunch? Right? Meeting guests for lunch every day, every other day, or staying after for happy hour, or going out for dinner, or doing whatever that is, right? And some of that is lunch meetings, which are proper, and that's okay, and that's fine. And some of it's just lunch, right? But I go back and I'm like, dude, I'm spending like $1,000, $1,200 a month on lunch, because downtown lunch for two guys, 75, 85, $90.
Yep.
Right? Like pretty easy. At a happy hour, there's another $100, $150, and you're kind of going, I'm just kind of like thoughtlessly pissing money away. Like there was also the fact of, okay, dude, I got a meeting. I got to go meet, Andrew in LA to go through this discussion. And so I'm just going to, I'll take it's just a day trip, right? I'm going to take a flight, jump down there, grab an Uber, go meet with Andrew, grab a lunch, get back, dude, that's $1,200, $1,300. And I'm like, on something that could have been done over Zoom in 20 minutes. Like, I just looked at that and realized it is that there was a lot of fat in the system for us. There was a lot of thoughtlessness in how it is that we were approaching working, where we were spending time, where we were spending money. It is that we could cut out immediately. So we got a lot more conscious about that. I think the other thing it is that we became more conscious of is that where you work and where you live don't have to be the same thing. And I think oftentimes it is people live in a certain area, a certain school district, a certain whatever that is, because, well, this area has nice schools and I can afford to live in that house there, and it's only 25 minutes from work. I'd really like to live over here, but it's either more expensive or the schools are this or one thing or another, right? And so you have these kind of different degrees of association. It is that make up your decisions, rather than there doesn't suck, or I can actually afford it, which has good schools. And that may not be here, but I can still work from somewhere else because technology makes it a lot smaller. So we started realizing that. We started realizing we didn't need a giant office, right? Most of our clients don't really ever come to the office. Like, you need a place to work. You need a place that is to get together. But, we started to realize that for us and for other companies, it's kind of like, I don't need 20,000 square feet in an office in Seattle. I could probably get away with 3,000, because not everybody's in the office, and they're not in the office at the same time. And what the hell are we doing? And nobody wants to come, right? And so there was a lot of these points it is to where, both from a money side of things, we became a lot more thoughtful about where we were spending time and where we were spending money. And then also too, is that leveraging technology and leveraging a couple things to make our world smaller, or to make the world smaller by use of this. I think those were some big revelations it is that really came out of us. I think the biggest things over time really for us have been people, right? Making sure it is that we consistently have good people and that we have standards for how it is that we operate. And then I think too, how you tell the story. The world is getting increasingly louder, maybe not louder, noisier. There's more happening from news to pings and dings and emails and tweets and all this other kind of stuff all the time. And how do I separate that stuff and make sure that we're communicating well with whoever it is that our audience is? That's a bunch of stuff that we've been thinking on and working through.
I've always found it ironic. It's the classic client wants to see the perception of substance in your business. They want the all glass floor through top floor building. Everybody's in a nice suit. And as an outsider, that means, oh wait, so they're just proving to you how they're going to waste your money over the course of time, because that's all nothing, right? That's all surface stuff. That's lipstick. So if they're spending their money that way, they're going to have to bill you that way so they can cover that sort of lifestyle. And that's a perpetual thing that I've never understood. I'm hoping that was exposed by the pandemic, and that people are being more efficient and more transparent. I can only hope, right?
One of the real-time prime examples of that is we were working on a deal, and I was in the city. It was in New York a few years ago, and went into a large investment manager, not like large like Apollo, but a tier or so below. And for frame of reference, like class A nice office space in Manhattan is between like $150 and $200 a square foot, right? For lease rates. It's not that in Phoenix or Seattle or whatever. I don't know what it is in LA, but the lobby of this asset manager, the lobby, just come in, here's the desk with the reception, and here's a little place to have coffee and to sit and have a little meetings and some nice plants and like that. The lobby, I think, was about 3,500 square feet. And so I don't know what 3,500 square feet times whatever, 150 or $200 a foot is. Do that math, $700,000. Is that what it is? $700,000. So it's $700,000 a year for their lease rate for their lobby. And you're going, good God, that's outrageous.
Yeah. But it's never made sense to me. Like, there are companies that want that sense of wealth at every touch, right? They want to be taken to dinners with that wine being served. They want to see that suit on. But again, to me, that just means there's fat in every direction. Totally. Going to be in every bill that's presented.
Without a doubt.
So,
without a doubt.
Yeah, never understood that. Well, you broached the subject of telling your story properly, because it's important in an era of noise. It truly is. What role has content played in the growth of JB Capital? How are you telling your story?
Yeah, I think for us, our audience, because of what we do and who we are, our audience is less Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, that kind of a thing. And our audience is candidly kind of more LinkedIn. And probably more LinkedIn plus some maybe, small industry events. I really like the LinkedIn platform, see lots of value there. Seeing that become more of a connective tissue for the business world, but now seeing some kind of social and some marketing kind of go in there. But still really like that platform. That's done well for us. We've authored a number of white papers and stuff like that, which does okay, not really. I mean, it's kind of a, hey, we're really smart if anybody wants to read it, and nobody gives a shit anyways. A lot of the industry events that are special, if they're like, I hate, like when I was younger, it was really cool to fly out and fly first class and go stay in a nice hotel and go to this industry event, all this kind of stuff. And then I realized that these people here suck. Like, it's all these guys that just want to look for an excuse to get away from their wife and kids for a couple of days and get drunk in the sunshine and pretend to be important and talk. And I was like, God, all these people are lame. And like, you realize, like, traveling and going to these events and doing all this kind of stuff, like after one or two, like, hotel rooms are lonely. Like, it's not romantic to travel and be away from your wife. I mean, unless you just don't love your wife and kids, and then maybe it's cool. But like, again, I started this with like, I got 3 really great kids and I got a super hot wife. Like, why would I want to be at hotel anywhere without her? Like, stupid decision. So we try to be thoughtful about, if I'm going to go do that, I want to have a hyper agenda for that event. Right ahead of that thing, I've got 6 or 7 meetings set up. It is to meet with Joe and Bob and Mary and whoever else. And we're either speaking at the event, or we're on a panel on the event, or there's something thoughtful about why I'm going to be there. Otherwise, I'd rather just stay home.
Hey, well, you're talking about the all elusive work-life balance chase. A lot of people seem to lose fact. Okay, I want a job so I can make a whole bunch of money so I can have a good life. But where's the life part in your version of that equation? Is that at 65 or is some of that now? And the answer for a lot of people is it's down the road somewhere and it's really not a presence. Yeah, being on the road is not. I did it for many years as a musician. It's not the world's most glamorous thing. I always said nobody ever paid me to play music. They paid me for the planes, trains, automobiles, and hotels. Because the music part, I'll do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that heard.
Gotcha.
All right. Look down the road a year from now. What are some things you'd like to be celebrating personally and professionally?
So in just over a year from now, my wife and I have our 30th anniversary. So we've got our 29th anniversary coming up here in a couple of months. So a year from now, we'll have our 30th. So my wife has said that I'm going to have to like take her away. So in a year from now, we have our 30th anniversary, my wife's 50th birthday, and our youngest son will be 18 going off to college. So she's like, you need to like stick me on a beach with a margarita for like a week, and just so she can decompress from 30 years, 50 years old, and now being empty nesters. So I think from a personal level, super excited about the path it is that my kids are on. We've got 3 kids, 24, about to be 21, and about to be 18. So basically 24, 21, and 18, boy, girl, boy. And they are all now just really getting into their strides. And so it is good to see and nice to see these paths that are going on. My wife and I seem to be getting better over the last, 7, 8, 9 years, and especially over this last kind of 2 or 3. So really pleased with that and where that's continuing from our family and our relationship. We're looking at buying a ranch in Texas. And so that's a part of this next year or so that maybe we'll have the land acquisition done. And so from a personal level, there's a lot of really great things there that I'm happy about. On a professional level, we have 3 funds right now. All 3 of these funds are in kind of the maturation phase to where the assets are paying off and winding down, and we'll give that big slug of capital back to the investors. That should happen over the next, between the 3 funds, between the next kind of 45 days to 3 or 4 months. And so I'm looking forward to that season ending to a degree, but basically the following season coming. And so we're looking at 2 new funds it is that will be kind of niche strategies that we'll be launching here in the next kind of 45 days. I'm really excited about that. And then excited about solving some of the client issues, like this big group it is that we've availed some capital for, and a couple of other nuances, being just really strategic and thoughtful about problem solving. Like I'm anxious to see where this next kind of chapter of JB is moving and leading.
Excellent. Please tell us what's your URL. Where can people find JB Capital? And other than LinkedIn, any other social media outlets you're using?
Yeah, for sure. So for JB Capital itself, it's easy. It's jb-capital.com. We're kind of easy to find, right? Purposely, right? So you can find us across URLs, you can find us across LinkedIn, or otherwise, if you want to connect with me, just Google the Jeremy B. Hill. That's across all social, personal page, LinkedIn as well. And would love to connect. And so if there's guys that want to sit down and talk about private capital or investing or solving problems or doing other stuff, would love to sit down. And if we can be thoughtful or helpful or otherwise, would love to.
Excellent. Jeremy Hill, continued health, happiness, and success for you and yours. And all the best to JB Capital. Thank you for spending some time with us on Business Ninjas.
Thank you, my man. I enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Be well.